So let's bring in Dr. Diane Hess. She's the founder of Gramercy Pediatrics and has been joining us to talk all things kids and vaccines and the coronavirus. So I know this is a necessary step, doctor, to test on children, but it makes me nervous. How are vaccine trials on children different than those involving adults?
Well, sometimes the dosing is different because it's based on, your body mass and your weight. So it could be. I'm not privy to the information that the dosing might be smaller for a child, whereas like an infant might get 0.25 of a flu vaccine of 0.25 mLs, and then an adult will get double that, of a half an ml. So that might be different. These are going to be very rigorous studies followed by multiple pediatricians, scientists, immunologists, and it will not be released on the market for children until it's proven safe. So I would say that they can feel rest assured that it's going to be a rigorous process, but we have all the best minds in science, working towards stopping this pandemic. So this is like the meeting of the minds, and I think that this is the golden age of science right now because everybody is focused on one goal.
Or I'll tell you what, let's just take that video out and put in 2001, and we'll start from the beginning. I'm going to show you how they communicate all the time, and it goes right over our heads. We don't understand it. We don't know it. We miss it. How many of you saw the movie 2001? How many of you understood what you saw? You understood it? What? Give me the message. Pardon?
Basically, where they talked about the sun, where it started to rise.
Yeah.
And the man was evolved from ape.
Okay, good.
Rebirth the end of the baby.
You got it. But the rebirth was what? As a new race in the new age. And the message was, if you can't make this quantum leap, you can't be a part of it. That was the symbol of the baby floating in space. The birth of the new root race going into the new age. And if you can't make this quantum leap and understanding that we're showing you in this movie, you can't be a part of it. You will be exterminated, rounded up, put in prison camps, used as slave labor, executed, whatever. We'll try to get some use out of you, but you cannot be in the new age with us. The new dawn, the rebirth of humanity. You starting to get the message? Are you really? Because if you don't, you have no idea how important this is. If you don't, you're lost. You won't even understand what happens and why it's happening to you.
On the main stage, the vast wheel of the future turns for another day of filming in the year-long schedule of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Stanley Kubrick has combined fact and fiction unforgettably in such films as Dr. Strangelove and Lolita. In the same sense, 2001: A Space Odyssey is a marriage of the knowledge of today and the insights of tomorrow. Inside the giant centrifuge, the technology of spaceflight is seen at close range. One of the scientific concepts being shown in the film is hibernation, a form of suspended animation for long-range spaceflight. Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke believe everything in their film will be possible in the next century. By remote control, Stanley Kubrick directs his actors in complex, deep space sequences. He uses concealed television cameras to monitor their performances. The coming century will reveal a new and startling universe, more complex, more diverse, richer than even today's physicists and astronomers envision. things which seem almost lost to our present world. Strangeness, wonder, mystery, adventure come again in space. This is the promise of 2001, A Space Odyssey.
And he taught me to sing a song. If you'd like to hear it, I can sing it for you.
Yes, I can't help it. Sing it for me.
It's called Daisy. Give me your son.
Man has observed in the world and has become acquainted with two distinct methods of working. These two methods proceed respectively from different spiritual sources and are radically different from the other. One is a method of evolution, that is, a method of continual change from one set of conditions to another, with increasing diversity and ramifications, in the effort to work out some far-off result which is not clearly defined to consciousness, and which constantly eludes pursuit. The other is a method of creation, according to which the plan and pattern of each thing is complete and perfect from the beginning, admitting of no improvement or development. One method is that of a mighty but imperfect spiritual being who aims at attaining, after a long succession of failures, some ideal state or result, and who in that endeavor perseveringly evolves one new expedient after another, as successive failures materialize. The other is that of an omnipotent and all-wise being, who works after the counsel of his own perfect will, who has no need to experiment, and with whom failure is impossible. One method is that of Satan. The other method is that of Jehovah Elohim. Those words are from a book called The World and Its God by Philip Morrow, published in 1908, from chapter 17 called Two Methods of World Making. And I had someone share the PDF of this book with me recently, and I've been enjoying it a great deal so far. I'm looking into reading some more of his books. Wrote quite a bit about creation versus evolution at the turn of the century, and also about Bible prophecy and other things. But I found that paragraph to sum up really the essence of what I was trying to get at when making this video, and this kind of strange theme concept that I can't seem to get away from with my Stanley Kubrick obsession. Just kidding, not really. But I started really thinking about this more when I saw one of the recent commercials for the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset, and I was just really struck by the intersectionality, I don't even know what to call it, of all these supposedly disparate topics and all these different agendas, and how they're all really just converge into one singular thing every single time. And how, once again, the cornerstones of evolutionary thinking is essential to globalism, and how it's just a continuation of the so-called promise of 2001, A Space Odyssey, the promise of the future to come.
Now, this amazing progress in space finds the American people less than well prepared to comprehend its social impact. Scientists maintain a dialogue with scientists, quite properly to be sure. But there remains a much-needed job of indoctrinating our public with the consequences of cosmic communication and the inevitable changes in our life, in our culture, our philosophies, our economy, our markets. Radical revisions in our total society.
The pandemic has radically changed the world as we know it, and the actions we take today as we work to recover will define our generation.
Now is the time to think what history would say about this crisis.
2020 has been challenging on a lot of levels, as economic, environmental, and societal frailties have been laid bare. But it's also proved that when we need to, we can act rapidly and restructure our lives.
Recovery from the pandemic is an opportunity. We can see rays of hope in the form of a vaccine, but there is no vaccine for the planet. Nature needs a bailout.
You don't want to go back to the status quo that you had before simply because it was the status quo that got us here.
With everything falling apart, we can reshape the world in ways we couldn't before. Ways that better address so many of the challenges we face. And that's why so many are calling for a great reset. A great reset? That sounds more like buzzword bingo masking some nefarious plan for world domination. Hands up, this kind of slogan hasn't gone down well. But all we really want to say is that we all have an opportunity to build a better world. And it's not surprising that people who've been disenfranchised by a broken system and pushed even further by the pandemic will suspect global leaders of conspiracy. But the world's not that simple. Every one of us has differing priorities, values, and ideas. That's part of why solutions are so hard to come by, and why we all need to be involved in the decision-making. Because whether it's politicians, CEOs, academics, activists, or you, we're all about getting people together, even those you may not like, to sit down at the table and develop solutions that work for all of us. But
we need enormous trust between the private sector and the public sector for this to actually work. That trust is hard to come by.
It's time for people to work together, listen to each other, and build this trust, so we can move towards a better world. And we really need one. Because while the pandemic affects us all, it's clear it affects some more than others.
The first people who are hit are the people at the front, those who are vulnerable. It is those on the front line who take it first, and that is simply unacceptable.
See, at the start of 2020, 1% of the world's population owned 44% of the wealth. And since the start of the pandemic, billionaires have increased theirs by more than 25%, whilst 150 million people fell back into extreme poverty. And with climate change set to dwarf the damage caused by the pandemic, the message from 2020 should be abundantly clear.
Capitalism, as we know it, is dead. This obsession that we have had with maximizing profits for shareholders alone has led to incredible inequality and a planetary emergency.
But no one can do this alone, and top-down approaches won't get us anywhere, because everything we've learned in our work has shown us that diverse voices lead to better results. And it's for these reasons that the forum talks about something called stakeholder capitalism, which would shift businesses away from just profit. Because
if we want to change where the focus of our recovery will go, then we need a new dashboard for the new economy. And that needs to encompass people, planet, prosperity, and institutions.
Giving people a real stake in the economy and putting well-being before growth. And that's all about getting the right people in the right place at the right time.
We must rebuild our relationship with nature for the survival of the peoples and our planet.
We have a window of time which is closing, and we need everybody who cares to get together and find solutions now.
It's the people who have great ideas and who share them with others. They're the ones who are shaping the future. So if you want to be a part of the change, then tune in, turn on, and get involved. Follow the Davos Agenda, right here, online, on YouTube.
So yeah, these are the folks who are guiding the future. All these ordinary people who've been forced to cover up their toxic breathing and close their businesses. Anyway, sorry that was kind of long. But I guess I probably should put a trigger warning or something. But there's definitely a lot in there, and I'll try not to get sidetracked on too many tangents. But that seems to be kind of the challenge with this one. But there is an overarching point that I wanted to focus on. And hopefully I probably don't need to spend too much time, if any, explaining why this whole Great Reset idea is essentially just the newest PR campaign for this whole New World Order Agenda 21, social engineering project. If you don't know what that is by now, then I guess you'll have to go figure that out. But hopefully you at least understand what that's all about. That it's been going on for generations now. This massive push to urbanize populations in order to control ultimately every aspect of daily life for citizens. And so you got climate change as a part of it. Of course, the pandemic is this horrible, unforeseen crisis that they want to take advantage of as an opportunity for this massive shift. So like I said, hopefully I don't need to explain too much of that. Otherwise, you are way behind. But what does that have to do with 2001, The Space Odyssey, and Bill Cooper, and the whole idea of this quantum leap? Well, as he articulated pretty well over 100 years ago, Philip Morrow, that is, this idea of there's two fundamental methods of working. Two different antithetical ideologies, or worldviews, if you will. But they are more than just worldviews. They're actually the spiritual foundation from which one's approach to life and history and industry and politics and society and everything is based upon. And those two spiritual foundations being creation versus evolution. And what I increasingly seem to appreciate about topics like cosmology, biblical cosmology, ancient cosmology, and questioning these multifaceted precepts of scientism, is how every time it comes back to this idea that we're not just debating the mechanics or the physics or the size and dimensions of this realm that we all live in and share, nor are we just debating the origins and the age of the cosmos, but ultimately the driving question is, where is it all going? So along with everything else, these two differing worldviews have very distinct eschatologies. And I remember that being a pretty significant realization about a decade ago when I started learning about many of the things that guys like Cooper had been talking about for many years, with this whole Mystery Babylon religion essentially at the core of all these different secret societies and elites and different sort of outer facades of these different groups and agendas. But at the core, they're all really the same thing. They're all trying to bring about this same Antichrist mission, really, and that's whether they understand that or not. And the amazing thing is that so many people still imagine evolution to be a completely non-spiritual belief system, but the reality is that the core of it is actually the complete opposite. Even while a rather sizable amount of people can see through this whole, marketing pitch for the globalists and the techno-fascism that it is, and all the focus and all of the attention goes on these figures such as Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and on. And for good reason, since they're all puppets who are being used very significantly in this grand narrative, this grand delusion. But when you go back and understand that everything really does break down to this distinction between viewing the world and viewing history the way the Bible describes it, where God is ultimately the one holding it all together, who created it out of nothing, who's provided for all of our needs, as Morrow describes it, where the plan and pattern of each thing is already complete and perfect from the beginning, admitting of no improvement or development, and that the redemption of the whole world and of the human race came through the death and resurrection of Jesus, who will one day return to judge the living and the dead and make a new heaven and earth. So in short, where history is finite, the lifespan of mortal humanity has a conclusion somewhere at some point. Even amidst all the different theological disagreements and debates amongst Christians who, about the rapture, whatever, aside from like extreme, preterism, where I guess there is no final return and there is no judgment and everything already happened, but aside from jumping off that theological cliff, to believe that at some point there is a conclusion, there is an end, there is a judgment, that alone is diametrically opposed to the method of working and the eschatology of the world, and the spiritual belief that somehow, some way, humankind is going to survive and is going to carry on and will be the masters of our own destiny and will solve all these crises and solve all this disunity and dysfunction and corruption, and which hopefully by now you can see is not playing out so well. But nevertheless, the dream lives on. And especially this past year, I think with all the lockdown stuff and the new normal kind of idea being pushed on everyone, where suddenly everyone's embracing the idea of working remotely and doing everything online, and basically all of your human connections and everything is just being mediated through big tech platforms and the internet in one way or another. And so, we've had all these, the protests and the riots, and then the lockdowns, and on top of that, some very interesting weather events over the past few years, especially the last few months. But in all of this, it's been pretty amazing to see how sort of the next stage, if you will, of this Agenda 21, of this trying to pull as many people into the system, into the grid, into the city of the future, beyond just bringing people physically into urban areas, which has been going on, like I said, but it has been a restructuring of that at the same time. Where it's like cities all over the world, downtowns are kind of just dead zones. And I guess we'll see if that's just part of a long-term plan to kind of gut out all the small businesses and jack everything up. But basically, yeah, now your ticket to functioning in the digital society, functioning in the new normal, is increasingly tied into, with digital access. And that digital access being increasingly controlled and censored. And long story short, all of this, all of these things being precursors to the eventual mark of the beast. And I know a lot of people just get tired of hearing about that, or hearing this idea that that's essentially what all of this is working towards. And by all this, I mean not just the billionaires and the overt globalists and, the elites and the deep state and whatever, but the entire religion of evolution that has gripped the world. Not just the people in power and the politicians and the people at the World Economic Forum, but the vast majority of just the everyday human population. And so there's a million different competing versions of an evolutionary eschatology. Carl Sagan has a different one than, a guy like David Wilcock has. But ultimately, they're all following the same seductive lie of you can be your own God. You can find your own redemption and salvation, and through the acquisition of knowledge and the application of your own energies and knowledge and pursuit. It's the same lie propelling the supposed quest to conquer the solar system that's propelling people to enslave themselves down here on the ground. That's the crazy irony of so many of these intersectionalities. And maybe I just keep coming back here because I've been trying to, really grasp, what is so fascinating about this whole space deception? Why is it so relevant? Because so many people still ask that question, what does this have to do with anything? But going back to 2001 and the idea that it really encapsulates the entire occult Mystery Babylon vision of a new age of man. And technology plays a central role, obviously, in that envisioned progression of evolution, starting with the bone, the evolved ape, where it becomes a weapon, it becomes a tool, and he throws it into the sky, and millions of years later, here we are, on the doorstep of the stars, floating around in space stations and climate-controlled little pods run by AI computers. People have been dreaming about this for years and years and years, and going to space and, living on Mars, moon bases and rocket ships, and it's always just, right around the corner. Now that Bezos has retired from Amazon, he can focus more on that whole thing too. It's just amazingly ironic. But it's ironic because so much of this propaganda was really just about promoting technology, promoting the use of communications technology, the use of all these new wonderful chemical-based products in your home. The space age was all about revolutionizing household living. It was all about social engineering, in reality.
It is the year 2001. You are on your way to a space station on routine business. You have been traveling less than an hour and have remembered to call your office. Now you transmit your thoughts across space electronically. You receive your answer transmitted directly to the built-in television screen in your case. This is but one example of what life will be like in the year 2001.
It was a brilliant marketing campaign from a certain perspective. Brilliant and sickening. And so it's amazing to see how this dream has affected everyone. And not everyone has embraced it with the same exuberance as others. But it's still kind of bizarre to me how the shape of that monolith is coincidentally just so similar to these devices that we now carry around in our pockets everywhere we go that track us and record everything we say and do. And yet, we're straight up addicted to these things, myself included. Even when you know what they're doing, what it's all ultimately for. It's amazing to me that this stuff is still going on. Just the fact that these NASA missions and the Mars helicopter thing these little TV shows are still playing while everyone is locked inside their real little space compartment. We got lots of space age masks on the market now. Not for walking around on alien planets, but for walking around on this alleged planet. This spaceship Earth. Spaceship Earth is what this whole Great Reset is built around. Somebody's got to manage the resources of Spaceship Earth, right? Otherwise, we're just going to overrun everything and run out of food. That alone, is predicated upon the rejection of a creator God who's capable of feeding and caring for everyone who's ever born. Population control isn't what God's concerned about. Us overrunning the resources of the world, of the earth. But what is God concerned with? Well, he's concerned about you and me. All of us. And the scriptures tell us that he desires none to be lost, that none should perish, but that the only way back to the Father is through him, through the Son, through Christ, through faith in the new Adam, the firstborn of the only new stage of human existence that will actually come into being, that being the resurrection. And everything else is just a pitiful counterfeit. Every other promise, every other dream is just a temporary delusion that promises ascension, that promises enlightenment, that promises a new golden age of peace and understanding and love and unity, The world promises these things over and over and over again, but none of it comes close to measuring up against to what God has promised for those who are found to be in Him when all is said and done. Our minds can't even conceive of it. To live without death, without aging, and without sin in the world. It's a more audacious vision of our destiny than anything that NASA or the mainstream media or Hollywood or science fiction writers or the occultists and the elites or any of them have dared to try and engineer.
Verily, verily, I say unto you, the Son can do nothing of himself but what he seeth the Father do. For what things soever he doeth, these also doeth the Son likewise. For the Father loveth the Son, and showeth him all things that himself doeth. And he will show him greater works than these, that ye may marvel. For as the Father raiseth up the dead and quickeneth them, even so the Son quickeneth whom he will. For the Father judgeth no man, but hath committed all judgment unto the Son, that all men should honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. He that honoureth not the Son, honoureth not the Father which hath sent him. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that heareth my word and believeth on him that sent me hath everlasting life, and shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death unto life. Verily, verily, I say unto you, the hour is coming, and now is, when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and they that hear shall live. For as the Father hath life in himself, so hath he given to the Son to have life in himself, and hath given him authority to execute judgment also, because he is the Son of Man. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming, in the which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice, and shall come forth, they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation. I can of mine own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father which hath sent me. If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. There is another that beareth witness of me, and I know that the witness which he witnesseth of me is true. Ye sent unto John, and he bare witness unto the truth. But I receive not testimony from man, but these things I say, that ye might be saved.
There is no human solution. Man cannot save himself, and man cannot lift himself up and above the station in which he was created, though man will try, and Satan will ultimately attempt to snuff out the existence of the truth from the face of the earth, and all those who believe. That is his ultimate goal before his time is up. And he knows his time is short, Scripture says. But do we? Anyhow, I appreciate you listening, if you've made it this far. Sorry, it kind of took me a few weeks to get this up and going for whatever reason. Just had a lot of stuff kind of interrupting the flow, and my back went out for like a week. That was fun. But yeah, as I was in the middle of making this, we just had the whole snowstorms in Texas and elsewhere. There you go, more Agenda 2001. Geoengineering the world into a manufactured climate crisis and targeting certain constituent populations at the same time. You know, unfortunately, I think even in that clip, the World Economic Forum, they're already saying that this climate crisis is going to dwarf the effects of the pandemic, so they seem to kind of already have an idea. I think it's just getting going. So I think that just all the more should compel us to seek God and pray that He would refine us and prepare us and increase our dependency on Him. Also wanted to mention that I did start an account on Odyssey, appropriately enough for this video, though it's spelled differently with 2 E's. I went ahead and did that, so at least my whole channel has been backed up there. I'll have a link below. Go subscribe, and I really do love you guys and appreciate all the encouragement, and so I'm going to try and get my videos coming out with more regularity. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully this made sense, and God bless you guys. Alright, later.